Hello, I'm Hal Wake in Vancouver.
Et je suis Claudia Larochelle à Montréal. Cette année et en 2021, le Canada est l'invité d'honneur de la Foire du livre de Francfort. La pandémie nous a obligés à adapter notre programmation, mais notre objectif reste le même, révéler notre identité au singulier pluriel sur la scène mondiale en présentant des auteurs et illustrateurs canadiens reconnus. C'est l'occasion aujourd'hui, à défaut de pouvoir traverser l'Atlantique avec eux, de vous les présenter virtuellement dans le confort de votre foyer ou où que vous soyez.
As far back as cave paintings, humans have used pictures to tell stories. Graphic novelists and children's book illustrators have a growing audience eager to explore and enjoy the interplay between words and visual language. For this discussion, we'll be looking into the joys and challenges of illustrating books in a myriad of shapes and forms. We're very pleased to introduce you to two author illustrators and an author of graphic books to learn how they create worlds of enchantment and magic. Our guests are Guillaume Perrault, Sydney Smith, and David Alexander Robertson. Sydney Smith lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He's illustrated numerous children's books, including Sidewalk Flowers by John Arno Lawson, Town is by the Sea by Joanna Schwartz, and his own authorial debut, Small in the City.
Guillaume Perrault est un illustrateur et un auteur de Rimouski qui habite Trois-Rivières, au Québec. Il a signé des dizaines de livres comme illustrateur et 3 à titre d'auteur. Cumulus et 2 albums de la série Le Facteur de l'espace qui a été primé au Salon du livre et de la presse jeunesse Seine-Saint-Denis en France. Et finalement, l'auteur David Alexander Robertson, membre de la Nation Cree de Norway House, réside à Winnipeg, au Manitoba. Il est connu pour ses livres jeunesse, ses romans graphiques et ses romans qui ont remporté de nombreux prix, notamment le prix littéraire du gouverneur général pour son album When We Were Alone sur le régime des pensionnats autochtones.
To start the conversation, we asked everyone to talk about their own beginning in art and how their own practice has evolved over the years.
Je pense que, comme tous les enfants, j'ai pris un crayon à un certain point dans ma vie. J'ai commencé à bricoler, à dessiner, puis j'ai juste jamais arrêté.
I was drawn to drawing as much as every child is. It wasn't until I was a little bit older that it became a place for me to escape to. It was a place where I could explore and create, and it was a safe haven for me.
I started as a writer when I was really in elementary school. It was something that I always felt drawn to. I was in grade 3, and my teacher gave us this assignment to write poetry. And I was always a shy kid back in elementary, so I took my paper and my pencil and I hid in the back of the closet and closed the closet in the dark, and I started writing poetry. And I found that I just fell in love with writing.
Pour moi, le dessin, c'était l'exutoire. C'était le moment de m'amuser. C'était le moment de vivre autre chose que le quotidien qui peut être plate de temps en temps.
I moved around a lot when I was younger, and during those times, I didn't have a lot of people in my life, and so I had my family, but I also had drawing, and drawing was where I went. I went into it very deeply, and it was during those years where most people will kind of drift away from drawing as a way of playing. I continued to enjoy art until I went to art school, and then it became more of a serious thing.
It's in my blood, like as an Indigenous person, we always pass down our values, beliefs, traditions, legends, histories through storytelling. So as I got older and I started to reconnect with what it meant for me to be Cree and tried to think about how I could merge that, coming to myself as a Cree person and my love of writing, I really wanted to write stories that would educate others about Indigenous people.
One of my professors suggested to me that, you could do children's books, you could do book illustration, and it all kind of lined up in my head. It's like, that's it, it's perfect. I'm lucky that way because I don't really think I could do anything else.
Devenir expert dans son art nécessite du travail. Combien d'efforts nos invités ont-ils dû déployer pour s'améliorer et développer leur écriture et leurs illustrations? Et qu'est-ce qui les met au défi sur le plan artistique? Nous leur avons demandé.
L'illustration, on pourrait imaginer que on est tous des personnes hyper visuelles puis qui sont super bons avec leur capacité spatiale, mais c'est vraiment pas le cas. Il y a beaucoup d'illustrateurs qui ont besoin d'avoir j'ai besoin de ma tasse de café pour dessiner une tasse de café, sinon je comprends pas comment elle est faite. Moi, j'ai une certaine facilité avec ça. Je peux dessiner pas mal tout de mémoire, ça fonctionne super bien. Mais pour moi, la portion texte, la portion écrite, c'est ce qui me demande le plus d'efforts, du moins en ce moment. Je suis pas un grand romancier, j'apprends constamment par rapport à ça. J'ai dû prendre des livres de techniques de scénarisation. J'ai dû contacter des amis auteurs qui m'ont donné des conseils, qui m'ont coaché même. Donc, ouais, c'est un sacré beau défi, je dirais.
I feel like I'm a very hardworking writer. I read a lot too, and so it helps me to understand approaches to storytelling, structuring stories, character development, style of writing, and different genres of writing. And so that's helped me immensely in trying to be the best writer that I can be in the books that I choose to write, and how I try to learn and grow as a writer. And I do that by challenging myself to write in forms that I'm not comfortable with. And so that's how I try to challenge myself and be the best that I can be.
For me, I can't work on a book unless I'm trying something new. Whether it's within the structure of the story, the perspective of a character, or the actual execution of the art. Maybe it's a new medium. Maybe I leave something out, put something new in, try something new. I have to draw all the time. I have to. It's not because I'm serious about it. I am serious about it. I have to draw all the time because it's a muscle. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised. I need to go out and sketch. I have no choice because if I let it slip, then I'm not comfortable. I don't have faith in that invisible force.
Il est très important dans la représentation des gens, du temps ou du territoire d'être précis afin d'être authentique, mais aussi significatif. On a demandé à nos invités ce que ça implique comme travail de recherche.
You know, in the stories that I write, I'm very meticulous in my research to make sure that I am accurate in the representation of history, the representation of character. And I think that authenticity lies in that accuracy as well. So even a fiction story, I need to be accurate, I need to be authentic, and I need to be meaningful in how I approach that storytelling. All of that goes through in how you connect with readers and what they take from those stories.
I think that it is important to do research, especially when you're working with very specific people, specific places, and specific times. But what comes from the research I've found is not details. I mean, there are some details. Town is by the sea. There's a very specific type of tea that they drank. You know, the shapes of the houses. But beyond those small details, the people are the same. Go to a place you've never been before, you think it's exotic, and you realize they're just like me. And that's, I think, what research brings.
Ce que j'aime beaucoup faire, moi, c'est mélanger des fois un peu les époques. Dans le facteur de l'espace, on est dans le futur avec une technologie qui a l'air assez rétro-futuriste, en fait. Les vaisseaux spatiaux sont un peu sont rapiécés. Il y a comme des petites plantes dans des pots, des tablettes pour dessiner, mais au papier. En même temps, il y a des robots. Donc, j'aime beaucoup faire une espèce de mix and match de tout ça, de prendre le meilleur de toutes les époques. Moi, j'ai aucun problème à avoir des anachronismes. J'ai aucun problème à avoir des images, des objets, des peuples qui sont peut-être décalés. Moi, je trouve ça intéressant. Puis j'ai aucun problème avec ça. Au contraire.
Let's find out when these artists began to work with words and images and what sent them down that path.
The idea of writing and illustrating my own book was always assumed to be the next step. As an illustrator who collaborates with other people, of course, eventually you want to make your own book. And I did. I enjoyed it. I created something I was proud of. But writing for yourself is hard. It's hard. It's really hard. I gained a lot of respect for authors through the process of writing for myself. I was able to write a story in a way that I wanted to see it, but it was almost too much power. I could go back and rewrite it. And at a certain point, you don't know if it's good or if it's bad. Words just look like letters on a page. Your eyes don't work anymore. I'm not a writer, I'm an artist who writes.
En tant qu'illustrateur, j'ai commencé ma carrière en illustrant des livres de d'autres personnes, des textes de d'autres personnes. C'était bien, j'ai adoré ce que j'ai fait, mais il y a beaucoup de moments où je me disais « Ah, c'est une bonne histoire, mais j'aurais aimé ça explorer tel truc. » Ou je pense que j'avais des choses à dire, moi, puis j'avais ce désir de créer non seulement une image, que j'adore créer, mais de créer une vie autour de ça, de créer l'univers, puis dans le cas du Facteur d'espace, de créer la galaxie autour de ça. Donc, c'est d'être capable d'être le maître de mon petit monde, de mon petit univers, en fait. On se sent des fois un peu comme Dieu quand on est un illustrateur, parce qu'on invente des personnages, on invente des modes, on invente des visages, on invente des décors, des mondes. Puis c'est ce qui me fascine. Puis d'être capable d'être l'auteur de mon propre univers, je me sens comme un créateur avec un C majuscule.
I grew up reading comics. So it was what taught me about the world, right? So it was one of the only things that interested me in terms of literature as a child. As I got older, I recognized first, I think, how engaging it would be for kids to write stories in a comic book form. So when I made a choice to start writing comics, it was a very deliberate decision because I thought that it would be the best way that kids could learn in the classroom because of the power that words and pictures have when you put them together.
There are now a lot of media that combine images and words to tell a story. Comics, graphic novels, picture books, and much more. They're often political or subversive in their message. We asked our trio how they characterize their approach.
I think that all writing's political. You know, I think that all writing is trying to convey a message, to illustrate a point. One of the most important things in illustrated works right now is to have diversity in them and reflected in them. I mean, that's another thing that I look for in the stuff that I read, is how it's representing the world that I live in and the world that I'm from. We call those own voices stories. And own voices stories are books about marginalized people written by marginalized people that have those lived experiences. And those are the stories that I feel we need to be reading right now, because it's teaching us about each other. And it's a platform that, you know, we never had before as marginalized writers, to write Indigenous characters, to make sure that they have agency and power, and how they're depicted and how they're written and how they move through stories. I think it's a responsibility that I have that I take very seriously. When I was your age, at home in my community, my friends and I always spoke our language. But at the school I went to, far away from home, they wouldn't let us speak our words. All the children used their strange words, and we didn't understand them at all. Our voices blended together like a flock of crows. Why did they talk in their language? I asked. They didn't like that we spoke our language, Newcomb said. They wanted us to talk like everybody else. But sometimes in the summer, when we were alone and our teachers weren't anywhere around the place we were, we would whisper to each other in Cree. We would say all the words we weren't allowed to say so that we wouldn't forget them. and this made us happy. Now, Anukum said, I always speak my language.
It's hard to not find anything that's subversive or political, but I don't really think about it in those terms. I'm trying to speak to the experience of being a child as a human, not as a separate organism. I want to speak to the child who has the same feelings as me, the same fears, the same insecurities. As an adult, you have the ability to compartmentalize, to shift. I'm going to feel this later. Oh, that hurts. I'm going to think about this later. But for now, I got business to do. For kids, they feel it when it comes. They process it. It's not always pretty, sometimes ugly, and often doesn't have a name. And that's something that's really beautiful. These emotions, we don't have labels for them when we're kids. They just hit us, and we have to roll with it. And it's all the time. And I see it in my own kids, but if I can address that, if I can speak to that within children's books and not speak down to children, but speak to them on the same level, that is my goal.
Ça a l'air vraiment niaiseux ce que je vais dire, mais le message que je veux transmettre personnellement quand j'illustre un livre jeunesse, c'est qu'il y a tellement de trucs qui sont lourds sur Terre, qui sont déprimants, qui sont tristes, qui sont effrayantes, puis on le sait très bien, là, je veux dire, on vit une pandémie en ce moment. Je pense que ce que j'aime faire avec mes livres, c'est d'apporter une légèreté des fois. Avec le facteur de l'espace, oui, je peux passer des messages là-dedans sur l'amitié, sur la crainte de l'inconnu, des trucs comme ça. Mais le message du facteur de l'espace, c'est que ça soit drôle, que ça soit jovial, que ça soit léger aussi. Puis la plupart de mes livres aussi, j'aime apporter cette petite touche humoristique. C'est important d'avoir un moment de répit de temps en temps, je trouve. C'est important de dénoncer, c'est important de se lever, de prendre part à des mouvements politiques, des mouvements sociaux, mais je pense que c'est important aussi de temps en temps de rire, de décrocher. Je pense qu'on en a besoin un peu, surtout en ce moment.
We hope today's conversation has given you the desire and the appetite to discover more about Canadian authors and illustrators. I'm Hal Wake in Vancouver. Thanks for watching, but most of all, for reading.
Pour en savoir plus sur les auteurs, les illustrateurs et les événements à venir concernant la présence canadienne à la Foire de Francfort, visitez le site internet canadafbm2020.com. Ici Claudia La Rochelle à Montréal. Merci d'avoir été des nôtres aujourd'hui et tchuss!